everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. I have a little announcement to make. We are going to be switching over to Mondays, so please look forward to us putting out the video on Monday instead of Friday. It seems to work better for both Jeff and I, so that's going to be something a little different. Hope everyone can adjust and that works for you. Today, Jeff is going to talk about the upcoming spring equinox, which is obviously right around the corner. Very powerful energies. Jeff's been speaking to these energies for a while now, but he's really going to focus and zero in on the specifics. And of course, he's going to cover some current events. So let's get started, Jeff.
Yes, thanks for that. So yes, it is the spring equinox here of 2024. Going to be a crazy year. It's a roller coaster ride year. I've been mentioning about a lot of energies that have been happening on the United States and the world. Got a lot of energies. And of course, we see a lot of tension. Look at the stuff that's been going on in Haiti, stuff still going on with Ukraine, Israel. You know, a lot of tensions brewing, all kinds of stuff happening here with the government and money and funding and cities going crazy. So this is a year that clearly is going to be very intense. And what's important, you know, I've been listening to a lot of economists lately and talking to people about money. Of course, gold hit an all-time high. And now we also saw Bitcoin did too. It backed off just a little bit, but it's way up there. So clearly, we're seeing the effects of the economy. And what's interesting is the Fed is hinting about cutting interest rates. Well, I think this is purely political. Because if you follow the technical models that everyone's talking about in terms of finances, they really shouldn't be cutting interest rates if they're, of course, trying to make inflation go down. But you can tell this is not really what it is. It's political. So again, remember, we don't have politicians. We have owners at the top of the pyramid telling the politicians what to do. So this is really powerful stuff that's going to go on this election year here in the United States. And I have to say, the finances look scary. They really, really do. The more I look at everything, I don't know how this ends well for us when we're cutting energies without viable replacements. And they're jacking up the cost of goods across the board. And we're seeing the debt soar to levels we've never seen before. I mean, this is unprecedented. You know, 15, 20 years ago, if you'd have told me that we'd have been at this kind of a debt rate, I would have said that would be impossible. I don't think anybody heard of the number trillion related to dollars much before the last decade. And I think, you know, the mind control media has kept us very isolated from that. And depending on which, you know, comedy show you listen to, if you listen to them, or which news station, you're really getting programming and propaganda as to what's really going on. And of course, they direct the focus for each of us in each direction, depending on which mind control channel you listen to.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club. And by the way, it's the same big club they use to beat you over the head with all day long when they tell you what to believe. All day long, beating you over the head in their media, telling you what to believe.
But when you look at the facts and you look at the astrology, it says quite a different story. We're not in good shape here. And again, I've been mentioning the United States is going through a Pluto return. We just had the first one back at the end of February. The next one's coming back in July, and the final hurrahs at the end of this year. And I can tell you this country will not be the same after it. It's either going to destroy it or it's going to push us such to the edge that the transformation actually makes us become the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So we'll see where that goes. We're also going to talk a lot about this in upcoming podcasts. I think the next one, we're going to talk about Roller Coaster America. We're going to get into some of the finer points that are going on this year. Also, I want to, as the election gets going, we're going to start focusing on the candidates that are standing. And of course, we see RFK today is getting Aaron Rodgers possibly in as a VP. So all kinds of stuff is happening right now. I think it's way too premature to speak about the election. So to get on to tonight's topic, which is the spring equinox, The spring equinox has traditionally been the true beginning of the year before the Gregorian and Julian calendars. And that's what does the equinox mean? It's a Latinized term that means when the days and the nights are equal. This is when the sun, or better yet, you could say the earth, is crossing the parallel path of the ecliptic, which makes days and nights equal. The only reason we get days getting longer or shorter in, of course, the summer and winter, respectively, is because at the solstice points, at the summer solstice, it hits its highest point in terms of the northern hemisphere. And in the winter solstice, it hits its lowest point. Days are shortest. And that's because of the angularity of the Earth. The Earth is sitting at about a 23-degree, 44-minute angle, pretty close to that, or 45. So what does this mean? Well, this has always traditionally been the beginning of the ancient New Year, and astrologers would cast a chart right on that. If the eastern horizon in a tropical zodiac was fixed, they'd use that entire chart for the year. If it was a cardinal sign, what they would do is they would cast 4 charts for the year. If it was a mutable sign rising, they would end up using 2 charts. Well, this year, when I did the chart for Washington, D.C., which for the United States, it's a fixed sign. Now, if you live in a different country, it will be different because you have to cast that chart in the climate or the area that you're in. But in the United States, this comes up as a fixed sign. So we're supposed to use this chart for the entire year. So what does it mean? Well, I can tell you this definitely looks like a year where there's more political mayhem, which we certainly would expect that one with an election year going on and a Pluto return. But the other thing that was really telling, and I also cast these in sidereal Vedic astrology, is it looks like there's a lot of tension on the public. Again, I hope I'm wrong, but I would not be surprised if we see some real mayhem unleashing this summer. And it really looks like the games began in April. Now, everyone's been talking about the alignment and the eclipses the eclipse that's happening in April. We have a total eclipse, very, very powerful. And I can tell you, we're going to talk about that next podcast for sure, because this eclipse is exceedingly powerful. And I think it's going to trigger and spark a lot of things that are going on in the political arenas. Also, in the sidereal zodiac, we have Jupiter ingressing into the Earth trines right at the end of April. So we're going to see a lot of activity coming up here in April and May this year. These are the trigger points that start things really rolling. The action will start happening. And again, I've mentioned many times, this summer in September, we have, for the first time ever, the United States is going to have the primary directed Saturn conjuncting Mars. Plain English, I hope I'm wrong, but that one could really bring trouble. That's all we need is one news broadcast of somebody doing something that someone interprets, against one race or another. We're going to see trouble. And this is really, a little topic I've been wanting to touch upon. When I look at the Constitution and this country's documents that were drafted for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, there was really 3 branches of power that were absolutely ingenious, and that was the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. And this was the founding forefathers' way of keeping tyranny from happening. That was the balance of powers and checks and balances between that. Well, it's very interesting because when you look back in history, the owners, which really came in at the Federal Reserve Act, have always sought to disrupt and short circuit this balance of power, but yet smart enough to keep the game going. And this is, again, what a lot of people call the quote unquote deep state, but it's really the bankers funding all this dissension behind the scenes. And I think we're seeing it more now than ever with the border crises, with all the other things that are happening to the judicial system in this country, especially when we look at the cities. Look at the crime and the infiltration. Many people are talking right now about the influx of all these people being flown into this country illegally. And there's a lot of mysterious stuff going on. There's been a lot of reports. So all of it fits with the Pluto return. And I think the end game here is literally to crash the financial system and put a new digital system in. Now, hopefully that will get stopped. I know there's a lot of people seeing that there's opposing forces to stop this. And I'm always a believer that the divine forces are above the demonic ones. But this is truly, I think, a game of good and evil playing out. And this spring equinox relates to that. Why? Because it's really showing the energies are at a very high tension. One of the things we're all noticing is the weather. Do you notice how erratic the weather patterns have been? And I don't think it's global warming. I think it's the alignments that are happening. You can see on the screen here, all these planets are in a very tight arc around the other side of the Earth. This is also very dangerous for earthquakes, also erratic weather patterns, and very, very powerful emotional patterns as well. In fact, people born during these times, they call them stelliums. This is where all the groupings of the planets are on one side of the chart or another. And of course, in a birth chart, that'll all group in your houses. So these are very, very powerful configurations. And it's, again, it's happened many, many times before, but this is adding another, you could say, straw to the camel's back here on this election year in the United States, and the tensions growing in the world right now. So interesting stuff. And, I would say also that this is going to exacerbate economic things as this year goes on.
It's interesting what you were saying about people being born during this time and where the planets are, how the planets are situated. We've never talked about that before. That's very interesting. We should bring that up on another podcast. Very different energies, very different energies.
Yeah, it is. Well, exactly. Whatever's in the sky when a person is born, that configuration is a reflection of the soul's journey during these incarnations. Very, very powerful. Yeah, and when you get concentrated energies, what modern astrologers call them bowls. Other people call them stelliums. In Vedic astrology, they're called yogas. And they are exceedingly powerful because what's ironic is how much it mirrors in the person's life. You see exactly the reflection of the parents, so on and so forth, that reflect the siblings, if you have any, and also the doshas throughout the lives. So astrology is really a reflection of the path of the soul, in my opinion, during these incarnations. And it sure plays itself out. It's absolutely amazing.
It sure is, and it sure does. I mean, it's pretty wild that you can see somebody's entire journey from beginning, middle to the end, right, by looking at their birth chart. It's pretty wild. And that goes for animals too.
Yeah, I think every living thing, we don't have birth charts on them, but every living thing is said to be influenced. They actually say the 7 planets have 7 archangels over them. And this is also the term many people have heard of about the 7 halls of heaven. The 7 lower halls of heaven are said to permeate in a hall of heaven that rules above each planetary energy. So again, I've always said this is a spiritual place of where spirit manifests into the physical world. We live our mundane lives with our bills to pay and all our focus and our egos and everything. But when you really stop and look at it, it is a place where spirit manifests. And when we look at what's happening right now in the world, we're just going through a convulsionary period right now into a very, very high-tech era. And I think there's a lot of people at the top of the pyramid who think this is a time when they can eliminate half or 3/4 of the human race and replace us with AI. And I have to say, AI is really scary stuff. I've been working with it, and it's amazing just how smart it is. But intelligence is not wisdom. It's just logic. And we aren't logical. In fact, I know I'm not most of the time. I don't know about you, but definitely we all are, again, emotional beings that amalgamate logic and emotion together. And that's why we'll never be like AI. And that's why I always think no matter how much trouble the demonic forces create, in the end, good always prevails.
Always. Well, what's scary about AI is the programming, right?
You bet. Whatever you feed into it. Well, and the thing that is AI can grow in logic and data references, and it actually can become much smarter than us because it is not subject to having to go to the bathroom, have to eat, have to sleep, have physical pains. As long as you've got electricity and that thing doesn't burn up, it's going to run. See, we're not like that. We're biological, physical, spiritual beings, which is a lot different than a machine.
Isn't it pretty crazy where we're at now with this AI? Isn't it pretty crazy?
Oh, yeah. I always mention the Terminator movies and really a reality. It's actually much more of a reality now than I think ever before.
Yeah. Well, let's see where we're at in 100 years. We won't be here, but maybe we will be. Maybe we'll have reincarnated by then. Who knows?
I don't think it's going to take 100. I think it's going to take 5 or 10 before we're going to really be up the ladder on this thing. It's racing forward.
Wow. Crazy. Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much. Anything else you want to add about the spring equinox?
I think the spring equinox this year is a great time to meditate. I always tell people, you can light a candle. And by the way, I do want to mention, and thanks for bringing that up, because the spring equinox, I didn't mention exactly when it was. And it's actually on March 19th at 11:06:29 p.m. in Washington, D.C. Now, if you're on the West Coast, or wherever you're at, you can extrapolate from there. That's Eastern Daylight Time. But it'll be happening on the West Coast at 8:06:29 p.m. on the Pacific Daylight Time. So if you're Central Time, just figure it out from there. But that's it. Or if you're somewhere else in the world, you will find that that's, you can extrapolate from that reference point. And I might also add that, again, this very, very tight alignment is really focusing energies. I know last night I was coming in on the 118 on a motorcycle. I was probably hitting 80, 90 mile an hour crosswinds, and I had to slow down. That's a 1,000-pound bike I'm on. I had to slow down literally to 45, 50 miles an hour. It was blowing me around. The semis were all over the road. Really dangerous. And see, a lot of these erratic weather patterns are happening because of these cycles and the sunspots that are going on. It's the cycles of the sun. So this spring equinox is kicking off a very, very powerful year. I would also say clearly that what it shows is a lot of attack on the public. And we'll see where this goes. And that means both psychically as well as, I hope not, but physically. The Lord of the Ascendant was besieged by Mars and Saturn, which shows the intensity that's going to go on this year.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for this. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please remember, we'll be releasing our videos on Mondays now, moving forward. Hope that works for you. Have a good week ahead. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time on Astrology Today with Jeff Harman.